running backs. At number 15, Dobbs. Who do you have?
15 for my running backs. Oh man, it's going to be controversial, but I have my explanation ready. Trust, I always come ready. At number 15, I have Najee Harris. And look, my reasoning actually makes plenty of sense if you're willing to hear me out. Look, two main things. Najee Harris actually has rushed for 1,000 yards the first, what I believe now. Let me just triple check my because I don't want to be wrong about this because I think it's also a Steelers record if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, first 1,000 yards for the first 3 years of his Steelers career, which I believe he's the only Steeler to ever do so. On top of that, look, and then we know the Steelers have had a lot of really good running backs over, in history. But on top of that, it's not just the statistics. It's actually the opposite. It's the statistics on top of the fact that this was a putrid offense with the most predictable play calling in the entire league. So it becomes much more apparent when you watch it on film. Like Najee Harris was trying to run the ball into teams that legitimately know that this play is coming. I mean, I can't expect that much success from a guy that's playing in such a putrid offense and to still go over 1,000 yards each season. Like, yeah, look, let's address the reality of how everyone likes to talk about Najee. Is he the most explosive runner? Is he the most pretty runner? No, absolutely not. But the reality is this, you don't need to be pretty and fast to be productive in the NFL as a running back. You just have to know when to hit the hole, where to hit the hole, and when to lower your shoulder, right? And Najee Harris has all those traits. Again, I understand the controversy behind putting him at 15, but I think I'm looking at it like how you're looking at it for a lot of quarterbacks. I think I'm expecting a huge upgrade in how that offense operates this year. And when Najee already showed he could operate in absolute shit circumstances, how could it not be up from there, right?
So I don't have Najee on my list. I understand completely what you're saying, and I'm not opposed to him being on the top 15 list. I guess my thing is like we know how Art Smith is, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Warren is going to get a good amount of carries because while Najee Harris is a good back, I don't know who Art Smith favors, and we know that there is no dominant piece in an Art Smith offense. It is everybody gets the ball, it's spread out, and I just have not been on the Najee train the last couple of years. Obviously, Matt Canada is like the number one hated person ever in Pittsburgh. Like they had posters of this man up in the downtown, but I don't know. I can see this. I am just not high on Najee this year, especially as he's not older, but like getting towards kind of the end of that contract.
Look, completely understandable, especially look, what you said about Art Smith is very true. I'm just under the assumption that he'll win more of that lead back role with Art Smith. But to your point, like Jalen Warren has shown when you put the ball in his hands, he can be electric. So if Jalen Warren ends up, winning Art Smith's favor, this top, not in the top 15 might have been a terrible, terrible take. But I'm sticking to my guns. I'm comfortable with it right now. And you got to trust yourself sometimes. I'm going to trust myself on Najee on this one. It could be a clown nose moment, in a few months, but we'll see. We'll see how this one ages.
What do you have at 14?
Number 14. I know you have mine on your list much higher.
Oh yeah, it's very different.
But regardless, we're gonna you're gonna feel where I'm coming from. I know we're gonna come to a good consensus on this one. Okay. I have Jahmyr Gibbs here at number 14, and so let's start with this. Why I didn't feel comfortable putting him like a lot higher is because one of the more important things that I always tend to favor when I'm ranking my running backs is like because it's the most important thing. Can you be out there consistently on third down as a pass protector? And last year, he has a lot, and I mean a lot. Lions fans know a lot of development in pass protection. Like he really is not to be trusted when it's time to be any type of decoy and be a blocker on third down for those blitzes. He's just not ready for it yet. But do I think he's going to get there? And was he there when he was at Alabama? Yeah. So I think he will get back to that point and he will figure it out in the NFL. I'm not worried about it. He's just not there yet, right? And on top of that, it's just kind of like I was saying about a lot of the young quarterbacks where I've only had that year of sample size. I just need to see you do it more than right. I need to see you do it this year as well when there's teams that have adjusted to your film. But I really don't have many concerns. Again, like to keep it as short as possible, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a steady riser on this list as the year goes along, right? If we were keeping track like week to week, I think by the end of the year, he could truly finish in the top 5 to 7 to 8 range, no doubt about it. Just this year, only on the rookie sample size. I still need to see him grow a lot as a pass protector. I felt like 14 was pretty fair, but don't get me wrong. I completely understand why you have much higher in terms of upside and athleticism, all that type of stuff. He's right there with the best of them in the league. I just need to see it more again, just another year of it, and he will be much higher on the list. There's just really not much more to say than that.
So I'm super high on Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a very special player. He had 10 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards on the ground, and then another 300 through the air with 71 targets and 52 receptions. I think all of those numbers are about to go up, and I just think with the fact that, the offensive line, you could argue, is just as good as last year. Another year in the system. He's a young guy who showed a lot. I think he can take a big step next year. And to be honest, I think he's one of the best backs in the league. So that's why I just have him so high. I think the ceiling is really unmatched. I mean, outside of Christian McCaffrey, I don't know why he can't be the second best back in the league. I'm not saying he will be. I'm just saying in terms of potential, that's how high I am on Jahmyr Gibbs.
No, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think like to what you're saying. I think for me, he's going to move up a lot towards the end of the year. Just for right now, I just had to keep him on that rookie sample size. But I completely understand where you're coming from. I definitely completely understand.
All right. Just let me talk about the guy I have at 14 before we move on because you don't have him on your list. I have Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones struggled a lot with injury last year, and he's going to a pretty good offensive line in Minnesota. And we know last year they struggled to run the ball. I think Aaron Jones can still be a productive player, even though he is, I want to say 29. I don't think he's 30 yet. And especially with the fact that they have Sam Darnold playing and possibly J.J. McCarthy, who the meme or joke about him is that he's great at handing the ball off. The Vikings don't have a good second option at running back. Aaron Jones, in my opinion, is going to be a dominant number one back for them. So I think he will easily crack the top 15 this year, and that's why I'm so high on Jones.
No, yeah. Well, I completely understand you're coming with that. My logic on it was just the getting older on top of the injuries. I just didn't know what to expect this year, but he very well could find himself in this top 15 again by the end of the year. I would not be surprised at all.
All right, Dobbs, who do you have at 13?
Number 13, I have Raheem Mostert. Again, because I don't want to spoil anything. I'll hold my tongue on this one. But let's just say the Dolphins had two very productive running backs last year, right? And he was one of them. He was the guy who it's like one of them was either injured and one of them wasn't, right? But no matter who was injured or who wasn't, they were both electric. I mean, incredible top end speed, hitting the hole very consistently, the right hole, and then just being very secure with the ball. That's Raheem Mostert. Played in the offense exactly how that Mike McDaniel wanted to play. Hits every hole he needs. Again, with that familiarity from that Niners system, basically coming over to the Dolphins, made it work very well. He's been very productive. Again, mine was less based off of and I think we already know this, but mine was less based off of stat projection, and mine is just more based off of pure talent, pure how good you're playing ball right now. And I felt for running backs, especially off of last year, ranking them, I think I'm pretty confident with having Raheem right here at 13, even though he's not even the best back on the Dolphins. The Dolphins have really good running backs. No spoiler, but kind of spoiler. But Raheem Mostert is not even the best Dolphin on this list.
So I don't have Mostert on my list just because I am a little wary of their running back room because of the injury issues and the fact that they added a third back in a Jalen Wright. So I don't know if that's an injury insurance for A-Chain and Mostert, or if that's we really like this guy. I really don't know how I feel about the Dolphins running back room, and it's kind of scared me. So I don't have Mostert on mine, and I think that's really the main reason why is the Dolphins running back room to me just seems kind of I don't feel comfortable putting anything on it because I just am so uncertain of how it's going to operate.
No, like, yeah, let me be like, because you're spot on. Like, let me be crystal clear about this too. Like, because, like, it's not, that's the problem, is like, I don't even think Raheem will be a Dolphin much longer, right? Like, the reality is, Jalen Wright is, yeah, they drafted him very likely to end up taking his spot. If anything, if this year, right, to your point earlier, more of a Devon Shane insurance. But long term, it's probably like a Shane and Wright. Raheem's getting older. We're going to get him out of the door when that contract's up, and that's what makes logical sense. But again, I was only ranking him off what he did last year. What
Yeah.
Raheem did last year was very impressive, but again, he is very subject to like fall down the list heavy as the year goes along, or as the years go along, especially. This is just off of what he did last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So 13, I am going to go because I have someone that you don't have. I have Rashad White. Now, I think he kind of broke out last year, and if you look at his stats at the end of the year, he played really, really, really well. And he was 10 yards short of having 1,000 yards on the ground, and then he also had 74 targets, 549 yards through the air, 64 receptions. So I think as Mike Evans gets older, they upgraded the interior of the offensive line, taking Graham Barton. I do think that Rashad White is probably going to be a volume back again. Yes, they took Bucky Irving. That doesn't scare me, though, to take away from Rashad White's carries. I think that's just kind of a change of pace back. They have, their running back room wasn't that strong to begin with anyway, so you needed a guy. But I just think Rashad White, although he is a little bit older, he is already 25. I think he can build on a productive season that he had last year, especially with the new OC in town. You want to take the pressure off Baker, even though he had a really good year last year. I just think he'll be a great complement to the pass game.
No, again, Rashad was one of those guys where he was right outside my top 15 range, right? Like it wasn't like he was too far out. I completely understand your logic. Definitely understand that. He was right outside for me. So having Rashad White top 15, definitely nothing wrong with that. I would say it's definitely a good selection.
What do you have at number 12?
Number 12, I got Isaiah Pacheco. And there's really, with Isaiah, we're at a point where, it's like we said with Chiefs backs, right? Anything Chiefs, people just glaze over it. I'll give Pacheco I'll give him his worthiness. Besides the fact that he's now a two-time Super Bowl champ, he plays very well in January and February when it counts. Look, besides that, we're talking about a guy who just runs. Hey, right, it's the meme. We all know. This is a guy who defines running hard. He runs so hard. He's created a unique running style that's like a cartoon, as everyone says, right? But it's no joke. I mean, that's really he runs so hard. It's like watching like a vintage. It's like Popeyes, like the Popeye or something like that. And it's not an insulting way. It's actually an endearing way because it's fun to watch. He plays the position the way it's meant to be played. Very physical, good pass blocker, right? He does everything you need him to do. He's become very much a 3-down back, and which is not necessarily what he was when he first came in the league. He's developed a skill set, become very reliable, ball in his hands, very reliable, and he does everything that she's asked him to do, right? So I felt like here at 12, perfect range for a guy like Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, so I have Pacheco at 15, and that just has to do with the way that the Chiefs run their offense. I think he's a very talented back. I think the fact that he went from 14 targets in 2022 to 49 in 2023 and got 2 touchdowns through the air, I actually think he can build in his receiving game, and I think he could probably go for 1,000 yards this year. At the same time, though, we do know how the Chiefs operate on offense, and it's never going to be a super run-heavy team. So with that being said, he's definitely one of the better backs in the league, but I just don't know, looking at it from the way they run their offense with the upgrades that they made throughout the passing game with Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. I don't know if that means that Isaiah Pacheco is going to have a better year. I can actually see him having a better year receiving because, maybe they want to go deep and he's more of a dump-off option than he was in the past. So, with that being said, Isaiah Pacheco at 15. Who do you got at 11, Dobbs?
All right. So number 11, I have Kenneth Walker. And for Kenneth Walker, right, it's kind of like obviously we want to see him get fully healthy again and have him get back to that point. I think that's kind of really all that drove him down my list for me. This is somebody that could be much higher on the list Just need to see him stay healthy consistently. And once I do, and once he does, if he can, I think he will steadily move up this list, right? Very, very athletic, super fluid, twitchy, high motor. Like he's got all the tools, right? It's just a matter of literally just being able to stay out there consistently. That's the only reason he fell down my list a little bit more. But we know, right? Like Kenneth Walker, incredibly talented. This was what was expected of him when he was drafted. When he's out there, he looks fantastic. We just need to see him out there consistently. I think you'd agree with that sentiment. There's really not a ton to say on him because we haven't been able to see him at his full potential yet. But I think if he can get to that full potential, the ceiling is very high, as as we all know.
Yeah, I like Kenneth Walker. My issue, obviously, is he's not been healthy for a full season in both his years. And I think he is very clearly a better back than Zach Charbonnet. But what scares me, and what did scare me, is that they took Zach Charbonnet so high after just taking Kenneth Walker. Now, I know, obviously, you want to have multiple backs in your room, but we have a new offensive coordinator there. We don't know how this offense is going to work. And I just don't I just don't know how I feel about Kenneth Walker. I think he's a very talented back, but with looking at the Seahawks offensive line, I don't know if I trust them, So I think it's going to be a very up in the air year for Kenneth Walker, and I think that there also is a possibility that they I don't know, they have good weapons in the wide receiver room, but I could also see them. I know Pete wanted to run the ball, so I don't know. Maybe that's why he was so productive. I don't know. Basically, my stance, I don't want to keep rambling. All I want to say is I am just unsure of how to feel about Kenneth Walker, and that's why he didn't make my list.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. As I've been saying, I'm just ranking them more on their ceiling and
Right,
what I
right.
expect of their ceiling, what I already know, combination of both, right? But with Kenneth, yeah, exactly. You could feel a lot of ways about it. I'm just leaning to more towards if he can hit that ceiling and stay healthy. But it's tough, right? There's a lot of ways you could feel about it. And running backs are volatile. Like a lot of people are gonna have a lot of different feelings about running backs. It is. This was one of this, if not the toughest, one of the tougher position groups to rank that we did today.
Number 12, someone I had that you did not have is Joe Mixon. I think he had a really good year last year. And I think, honestly, behind a pretty good offensive line in Houston and the offensive weapons that they have, I mean, Devin Singletary had a good year last year. Why should Joe Mixon not? So I think Joe Mixon doesn't get talked about a lot because he's not a super flashy player. I think he's just a pretty good running back. So I think with the way that the offense is going to function in Houston and really just kind of being that dominant back in that room, could lead to Joe Mixon having a very, very underrated, sneaky good year, because your backup is Dameon Pierce, and we know the system last year really didn't click with Pierce. So I don't really think it's going to be much of a committee. I think it's pretty much going to be Joe Mixon. So that's where I got him at number 12.
You see, I just didn't have Joe Mixon just because it's just, guys, more than anything, you do notice the theme with this list. It's like the guys that I had that were older either produced incredibly well last year or they're not on the list. And that's my thing with Joe is just like, and you know me with running backs. Like, I think that I generally don't trust shelf life with them very much. And I feel like Joe is kind of getting to the very end of that shelf life
Yeah.
where this could be the year where a major drop off happens. But don't get me wrong, he did play damn good ball last year. And when he's out there, he always does. And so if he can come back and not have a regression year, I do think that I'll probably, fair enough, say regret not putting him on my top 15. It was more just projection for Joe Mixon, but he could definitely find his way, somewhere where I much higher than I had him, where I maybe should have had him in my top 15. My running backs were just really hard for me. There were so many guys I wanted to put that I didn't put. Running backs were really tough to rank.
Who do you have at number 10, Dobbs?
Number 10, I have Breece Hall. And I think for Breece, it's simple, right? Like the Jets offense, it's kind of like a Najee Harris situation, right? Except a very different style of back than Najee is. But you see what I'm saying, right? It's the offense was the issue, not the running back. And again, but Breece is much different than Najee. Breece is explosive speed. He's got all the moves. He's super fluid. But it's the same concept. Behind a productive offense, he will look so much better than he looked. And he was already being productive behind an absolutely putrid, shouldn't even be in the NFL offense. So if we expect the transition that, and we receive the transition that we expect from him this year, I feel like there's no way he's not going to be a top 10 back. And that was just kind of my logic on putting him in the top 10. I just didn't know where to put him on the top 10. But I expect a humongous year from him. And that's really all there is to it.
Yeah, I think Brees Hall, really the sky is the limit with him. They upgraded the offensive line massively. Aaron Rodgers is back. It's going to be a completely kind of different offense. I mean, he had 95 targets last year as a running back. So I think, and he was 6 yards short of 1,000 in the air. Like, I may sound a little crazy, but I could see him going 2,000 yards from scrimmage through the air and on the ground. So I'm just super high on Brees Hall. I think him and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably the future of the young running backs. So I think with an improved offensive line and Aaron Rodgers returning, that Brees Hall could have one of probably his best season yet.
Oh, absolutely. That's why, again, like I should probably have him higher. It's just, I just don't know exactly what to expect. To your point, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, it could end up being where it's a lot less targets because now the QB will actually know where to get the ball much more consistently.
Right.
But so, like, I just didn't know exactly where I wanted to have him rounded out. But there was no doubt. He is top 10, even with that putrid offense last year. He should be top 5 this year with a much better offense. And I probably will regret having him as low as I have him. But it was mainly, like I said, more than anything based off of just last year, sprinkled in with the expectations for the future, right?
So I am going to go number 10 here because you do not have him on your list. I have James Cook. And the reason I have James Cook is because obviously we talked about Josh Allen and the situation kind of there in our top 15 quarterback rankings in the first part of the show. And the reality is they are going to have to work out their offensive identity. James Cook had a really good year last year. They drafted Ray Davis, but we don't really know what he can be at the NFL level. And, you know, if you look at what James Cook did last year, 1,100 yards on the ground, almost 450 yards in the air, 54 targets, total of 6 touchdowns. I think if they're going to run the ball more, this could be James Cook's breakout year, and I expect him to get a little bit more of the load on offense. So it's going to be an interesting year for James Cook, and I think because of the lack of certainty in the wide receiver room or pass catcher room, that he might be a little bit more of a focus on offense.
No, and honestly, James Cook, and just again, one of those guys very, very much on that right outside of the top 15 for me. My logic on James was just like, look, he made a humongous stat jump last year. I just want to see James get a little bit better, more consistent, reading the gaps, becoming a little bit more gap intelligent, like just being quicker to read where he needs to go. But he made, and he, let me clear it, right? He made up with that with the athleticism he possesses. He made up for it with the fact that he's incredibly twitchy, incredibly athletic. If he can mirror those two together and really bring them together, become much more, right, read the gaps a lot better this year and use the talent that he very clearly has, I very much will regret leaving him out the top 15. I just, again, with now, like you said, Ray Davis coming in, I don't know what the snap share is going to look like. Those contingencies kind of made it so he was right outside the top 15 for me. But don't get me wrong. He very well could have a humongous year and make me very much regret leaving him out of the top 10. Or either top 10 or top 15 for that matter.
All right, Dobbs, who do you have at 9?
Number 9, I got my guy. Wish I could rank him higher, but I can't after last year. I do expect him to finish much higher as the year goes along. But for right now, at 9, we have Bijan Robinson. Again, like I was just saying, like, I expect him to finish much higher. I expected him to actually have a much better rookie year than he had. I think a lot of that was the Art Smith effect, though, as we've already discussed multiple times over. It's like when Bijan gets his real opportunity to really get number 1 touches, and again, not that Tyler Algier, he's nothing to scoff at. Tyler Algier is a fantastic second option, which also kind of hinders maybe the potential breakout of Bijan. But from a talent standpoint, from what I know that he'll be able to do at the next level, and he's already shown flashes of it. I just want to see it be more consistent. I want to see him get more touches, as I've already said. But from a skill standpoint, from what we know he can do, I felt just it would be criminal to move him any lower than 9 because I do truly expect an absolutely, I don't want to say astronomical, but a much bigger breakout than we witnessed from him last year.
Yeah, I got him at 5. I think, with the way that the offense should function now that Art Smith is gone, he should be the lead back and not, oh, why is Tyler Algier playing over him? Hopefully Zach Robinson isn't smoking crack on the sidelines. It was very frustrating to see that offense last year. But obviously, with being able to go through the air a little bit better with a competent quarterback in Kirk Cousins, throwing to Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, and the offensive line being as good as it is, you know, Bijan Robinson should be a very, very, very scary threat in the pass game and the run game. He almost had 1,000 yards on the ground last year and had 86 targets. So I could see that those targets hit 100. I could see him going for like 1,200 yards. So with that being said, I think Bijan is one of the biggest excitements for the running backs going into this year.
Oh, absolutely. If not the biggest, if you're me, because like I said, like when he was coming out of college, man, this is a guy where it's special tape. It's special tape. He just needs to get those touches in the NFL. And again, the sky is truly the limit for Bijan. I'll keep harping for my guy.
Who do you have at number 8?
Number 8, we got James Conner, and humongous leap, right? Like talking about guys who made the biggest leap from one year to the other in these lists. I don't know if I would have had James Conner in the top 15 at the start of last year. But after last year, and when he showed consistently behind a very, very mid to below average offense, I mean, the pass protection, the hard running, the gap intelligence, like James Conner was using it all to his strength last year, right? And to the point of, I'll kind of use like a contrast, like a James Cook, to kind of contrast him to James Cook. It's kind of the opposite, right? Like he doesn't have that natural athleticism. He does. He's obviously everyone in the NFL does. But you get what I'm saying. Not that same level of like twitch and athleticism James Cook has. But to make up for it, he hits the right hole very consistently. He's very strong, very good contact, right? Contact balance is very on point. Like James Conner has kind of like really revitalized his career here. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but certainly not. I don't really think anyone expected what he did last year to kind of come out of nowhere as it did. And so with that being said, credit where it's due, I felt like it'd be criminal to put him any lower than 8 because just again, my rankings more purely based off of last year with sprinkling those expectations for this year. But off last year, I couldn't put him any lower because he had a fantastic year in a very bad offense last year.
Yeah, so I have James Conner at 11. I mean, statistically on the ground, he had his best year of his career. 5 yards per carry, 1,040 yards in only 13 games. He had 165 yards through the air and 33 targets. Now, he is 29. They did draft Trey Benson, so I still think this is going to be James Conner's year. And I think if he could stay healthy, I don't see why he can't go for 1,200 behind an upgraded offensive line and a second year in that offensive system. Now, with that being said, I don't think James Conner is going to be on my list next year. I think this is kind of James Conner's like last productive year. So with that being said, I have him at 11.
No, you know what though? You're spot on. I agree completely. Like about Trey Benson, as we said, when we're doing our Cardinals like deep dive, like when we were doing our discussion, I think it's like Trey Benson's gonna come take that sooner than later. As Joseph said though, it's kind of like it was, this year James Conner's probably gonna be the lead guy, but after that, Trey Benson is probably gonna come in and take that role sooner than later. So that's just kind of how I look at it right now. But again, off of last year alone, I just couldn't put him any lower than 8. I would have felt that was a little criminal.
All right, going into number 7, Dobbs, who do you have?
I have Josh Jacobs at number 7. And you know what? Look, this is another one where I can already hear the comments. I can see them already. After last year, how could you have him over some of these other guys? Like I said, I sprinkled in the projections, but for Josh Jacobs, I might have used the shaker a little bit more than sprinkling it because it's like when we saw what Josh Jacobs can do at his ceiling. Josh Jacobs was the best back in the league for a year, right? And if he can get back to that ceiling, which again, I look at it very black and white, but I'm also like I'm on both sides. If that makes sense, it's very tough because, like I said, running back shelf lives I don't really believe in very much. But Josh Jacobs also is one of my guys. It's tough for me, bro. You remember when he was coming out of the draft however many years ago, I was saying this is my guy. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be really good in the league. And not only was he really good, he truly was the best running back in the league for a full season. And that was very recently. The injury-riddled season last year, it's very tough. It was very tough to rank him because it's like, is he ever going to get back to that same form? Or is he just going to be another one of the running backs in the history of the league that got to the peak and had a very, very steep decline, which we've seen so many times. So it's tough. I don't know what to expect. But if he can get back to that same ceiling, then he's going to be higher than 7. But if he crashes and burns, then he's going to be off the list sooner by even the end of the year. So with that whole like soliloquy being said, I didn't know where to put him. I put him
Yeah.
right in the middle. I feel like it's boom or bust, and I didn't know where to put him. So for that reason, 7 was where I was comfortable.
So I have Josh Jacobs at 9. I really do like Josh, but the thing is with him is he definitely is a volume carry type of back where he just kind of gets going the more you give him. And I do think he will be productive in the Packers system. Now, that being said, they do have Marshawn Lloyd and A.J. Dillon. So I do think it'll be a little bit more, backfield by committee there. I do think Josh will definitely be the lead back. But with that being said, I am uncertain in how good Josh is going to be this year. He had a 3.5 average carry last year. He had 805 yards, like definitely a dip in production, but we
Humongous.
know,
Like, it was not just a dip, it was a critical dip. Like
yeah,
critical.
I guess the biggest thing is we saw the difference in how he was used when it was McDaniels to AP. So it'll be interesting to see how LaFleur uses him. I think, he could have a really good year behind that Packers O-line, but I also think it could be kind of more of the same that we saw last year.
Yeah, it's that he was the toughest one for me to rank because there is such a like range in a 2 year period where it's like, man, oh man, I had to just even him back out, and we're gonna see where it goes.
So I'm going to go with my 8th guy because you don't have him on his list, and that's Travis Etienne. I think he's going to have a really good year in the Jaguars offense with the additional pass weapons. And if Doug Peterson obviously takes back play calling, we talked about that with Trevor Lawrence. I just think he's maybe one of the more underrated backs in the league because of how good he is, how explosive he is. And I think that's just because due to the fact that he's in Jacksonville, honestly. They don't have a ton of other weapons in that running back room, and he's gone for 1,000 yards these last 2 years. And last year he had 73 targets, 476 yards in the air. I think he could easily go for another season where he's getting 1,600 yards from scrimmage. And he also had, I know touchdowns aren't necessarily the best thing to rely on, but he did have 12 total touchdowns last year, and he had 11 on the ground. And yes, he was a little bit of a volume carry back, averaging 3.8 yards per carry. But I do think that has to do with the fact that their O-line wasn't the greatest last year, and they did shore up the interior, so that should help him out.
No, yeah, and let me be clear. Like again, because I feel bad. All the guys that you have that I don't have, like they were literally the guys that were like right outside. Like that's not. It's not like these were guys that I had like they were literally taking a bat to the door and demanding to be let in. I just couldn't, because my logic for ETN is very similar to who I had for James Cook. I think right. It's like the athleticism, the talent, the explosiveness, like you said, it's all there. I just want to see him tie it together more consistently, hitting the right hole, not having to rely on the athleticism as much. But also to your point, and let's be real about this. The Jags O line does have a lot of they just have a lot more to go. I know they made some changes. You and me both feel the same about the Jags O line and the Jags offense as a whole. We don't really know how to feel about it. So the combination of those things, he was right outside the top 15. But if he can become more gap intelligent this year, it's kind of become like the word of the day with the running backs. But if he can become more just consistent, hit the right hole, don't rely as much on that athleticism, because if you can combine the two, like I said, I can see him going for 1,400, 1,500 yards on the ground. I just need to see him tie those two things together. But there's no doubt he certainly has the talent to do it.
Who do you have at number 6?
All right. Let me just say it because I'm already here in the comments. But you know what? I had to stick to him. I couldn't give up on him yet, just like how it was for Josh Jacobs. I got JT, Jonathan Taylor. And look, again, just like it's very similar to Josh Jacobs. It's actually like there's literally like basically no deviation between how I feel about the two. Like we saw at his ceiling, JT up here, best running back in the league. Oh my God, this guy, you have to revolve the game plan around JT, right? But then at the ceiling with the injuries, it's like he's not even getting the lead snap count. He's not affecting the game how he used to be affecting it. And the question now arises, how is he going to bounce back from the injury? But like I'm saying, it's just the same thing as Josh. I can't knock you all the way out until you have had like 2 bad years in a row. If he has another, not because he didn't have a bad year last year, but just not consistent, not getting the same touches, not the same productivity. If you have 2 years of that in a row, he'll very likely fall very far down the list, if not out of the list. I just him and Josh, I had to give one more shot to prove that they still deserve a spot on the list because they certainly did a year ago. These would be guys that were like in top 2 or 3. So I just didn't want to knock them down too much off of like one bad year of sample size, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have JT at 7 just because of the fact that they upgraded their pass catcher room with AD Mitchell and then Josh Downs taking hopefully another step this year. Obviously, I do think their tight end room could improve. But with that being said, I think, with their O-line taking another step forward, this is going to allow JT to kind of dominate on the ground without having to worry about carrying the offense. If Anthony Richardson is back and he can rely on his pass catchers to get open and they have to defend downfield and that opens up the box for JT, I think he should run all over defenses this year.
No, absolutely. It's more just him getting fully healthy again too. Like I even use rare example where when we do anything like this, but I'll use a personal anecdote for JT specifically. Like when I watched him play last year at Lucas Oil, when me and my dad went to the Saints versus Colts, even and every Colts fan was saying the same thing around me. Like it was literally like we were all saying the same thing, not just from they're the enemy point of view. This was like no, Colts fans were saying the same thing. You could see like JT did not look like the same JT at all from the year before. The explosiveness was not there. The twitch was not there. The power even not there. So if he can get that back this year, there's no doubt he can be a top 7 to 5 back, if not higher. It's just that if he has another year where it's a regression from what it was last year, it's going to be a steep fall off. Him and Josh Jacobs are just like this. You don't know how to feel about it, but I wasn't ready to knock him off and, give him the boot just yet.
All right, give me 2 seconds. Sorry, bro.
No, bro, you're all good. No, I know how it goes, bro.
All right. Yeah. No, you're good. All right, ready?
Yes, sir. You already know. Actually, real quick before we start, bro, what's our just remind me one more time. I'm gonna put up my notes. What's the PFF login for YDKB?
It's just the Gmail.
Okay. So it's the same password and everything?
Well, you just click like sign in through Google.
Oh, dude, what am I doing, bro? This is why I need to just open my eyes sometimes. Like, motherfuckers be like, Dobbs, bro, just open your eyes. I'm like, I just laser in on the first fucking thing I see on the website, bro. Like, hold on, bro. I'm just clicking it. It's
No, you're
giving me a
good.
long ass. Okay, there we go, bro. There we go, dude. All right, now bro, I'm cooking. Okay. All right, let's get it, bro.
All right, who do you have at number 5?
All right, at number 5, potential controversy incoming. At number 5, I got Kyron Williams. After what he did last year, I think, again, like let me be crystal clear. I'm not saying he is Todd Gurley. He is not Todd Gurley. He is not Todd Gurley, right? But with that said, can he produce kind of similar to how Todd Gurley did in this offense? And did he even last year to an extent? When he went, especially the second half of the year when they got rolling, yeah. And the thing is this, he's above. I would say he's a solid pass protector, but the twitch, the gap intelligence, he ran this offense to perfection last year, right? Like Kyron Williams was doing everything you want him to do. He's very young. We expect another jump. Obviously, adding Blake Corum kind of adds some competition. And yes, in terms of like, could Blake Corum end up even stealing his spot eventually? Because I also high on Blake Corum. Yeah, for sure. But like I said, I'm just going based off of last year. And what Kyron Williams did last year was incredibly impressive. I felt like, and it was enough to warrant him a spot in the top 5. Because again, if you said at the beginning of the year Kyron Williams is going to be a top 5 back to me last year, again, similar to some of these other guys I said, I would have said you're absolutely fucking insane. But after what he did last year, the tape didn't lie. Incredibly productive, incredibly smart, incredibly efficient. I'm sorry, I had to put him top 5. It's just the way I saw it from last year.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing. I don't have him on my list, and the reason is kind of the Damian Pierce reason. They added another running back, and he wasn't drafted the highest, right? He was taken in the 5th round, and I think that's when actually Pierce was taken. They add Blake Corum, and Kyron has shown that he struggles to stay healthy. I mean, he's already hurt right now. So while I do, for personal reasons, want Kyron Williams to be a top 5 back, I have a lot of shares of him in Dynasty. It did scare me once they took Corum, and now that's probably just an insurance policy. And if Kyron Williams plays like he did last year, I don't think he's going to lose his spot. But I struggled to put him there because he is a late round draft pick who had a really good year, and he is very injury prone. And sometimes when you're a good back, the best ability is availability, and he has not shown that he can be available for full 17 games. Now, it is only one season, so open to see what he can do, but I do really like Kyron and what he can do for the Rams.
See, the injury thing, though, I don't blame you then. Like, if that was like the main thing you're equating, I don't blame you for leaving out your top 15 at all. It's just when he was out there, he was damn productive last year. So that's why I had him so high. But I completely understand where you're coming from.
At number 4, who do you have?
Number 4, we got, because, oh man, my only hypocritical take of the day, I promise. But he was so special when he was out there that I'm willing to be hypocritical for him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to, because I've said where I'm not gonna let just the 1 year sway me as much. But I think for running backs is actually the one position group that you actually can be. Running backs, it's fine. Like running backs, it's like, you know what? Sometimes, usually, you have the best years of your career the younger you are, right? It's kind of like again, back to sample size and everything else we've already been talking about. So at number 4 already, I'm very comfortable. And he truly could even end up being higher by the end of the year. You could argue him higher right now, truly, off of just the snaps he had last year, albeit it wasn't a ton of them, but he averaged 7 yards a carry. My God, was he efficient and just electric with the ball in his hands. Without further ado, we got Devon Achane at number 4. And I think, again, just for the reasons I've already listed, like just electric is underselling him. He is just the was he not, if I'm not mistaken, did he not like clock faster than Tyreek at some point last year? Like he was the fastest player in the entire league.
Something like that.
Mile per hour, like
I don't have him on my list, and it was hard not to put him on my list. But kind of the same thing, not all the same reasons, but kind of the same thing with Kyron is you have a guy that you know you can count on in Mostert. You have a guy you hope you can count on in Jalen Wright. And it just is such a muddy backfield. And yes, he had 800 yards on 103 carries, which is insane. But he only played 11 games. And I guess my thing is, with the loaded backfield, with the injury history for the 1 year, I just don't know if I can trust him to be available where he's putting up 1,000 yards. And I think they're going to switch the ball out to Mostert and Jalen Wright quite a bit. So with that being said, I do think he can be one of the top, I'll say it, 5 backs in the league if he can stay healthy. I just don't have and I think that's another reason I kept Kyron Williams out,
No, again, I think that I completely understand what you're saying. What you're saying is also very logical. For the running backs, I kind of like, as you can see from my list, the list shows, I'm willing to I gave a little bit of leeway for the injuries because I was just ranking off of like when they were out there at their peak. It's like, all right, what do I see from these guys? And at his peak, there's no doubt, truly. I mean, aside from CMC, at his peak last year, you could argue Devon Achane played better ball than any other running back in the league. It's just a matter of, like you said, him being able to actually stay out there with that incredibly frail frame. That's going to be his biggest issue. However, expected to put on some weight this offseason. Expected him to work with probably a few different strength trainers, guys who can help him get that contact balance up, really help. But it's the reality situation. There's only so much you can do with a frame like him. So we're bottom line. Let's hope he can stay healthy because when he's healthy, he's a lot of fun to watch.
Who do you have at number 3?
Number 3, we have controversy again here. There's no doubt because the more I think about it, it's really tough not having him at 2. But I'm going to get to my reasoning for who I have at 2 at 2. We got Saquon Barkley at number 3 here, bro. And again, I'm not ranking this off of my expectations of it. Primarily, it's much more off of like just last year, right? Like if we were going to talk about expectations of what he's going to do in this Eagles offense, and aside from the injury concerns, you could literally straight up argue Saquon to 1, like right now, like with the expectations we have from that Eagles offense. But I think it's just like, off of last year alone, behind an absolutely putrid O line. And Saquon has shown, look, like he bounces back from injuries, and he still is able to be an incredibly productive back. He has that rare skill where he just dog in him, right? Back to the theme, that just dog in him. Like Saquon's just a dog, right? Like so that's why the injury history and concerns and all that doesn't worries me as much because he's shown he's just that dog, and he comes back, he makes it work. Even if he does miss a couple of games this year at certain points, I wouldn't worry about his longevity for the playoffs. And matter of fact, it's kind of like we were talking to Philly Film Room, and we were talking like he was saying. Look, the reality is Saquon, even if he doesn't get a ton of touches early in the year, you just want him productive at the end of the year. You just want the Eagles and the Eagles fans want to make sure as long as Saquon's rolling by January, February, that's all you can ask for. And there's basically no doubt he's going to get rolling incredibly fast, incredibly productive in that Eagles offense. So, yeah, there was no doubt Saquon was going to be top 3. It was just a matter of where he was in the top 3. I feel like with my other 2 guys here, I have at 1 and 2. And I'm going to have to make a hefty case for who I have at number 2. But I think I'm going to do a good job. We'll wait till we get there, though.
Yeah, I have Saquon at number 2. I just think with the way the offense is going to function and with being behind that offensive line, I mean, realistically, this is the best line Saquon has ever seen in his career. And as long as he can stay healthy, close. I mean, he's a better back than DeAndre Swift, who had an amazing year last year. So through the receiving, through the pass game, through the run game, I just think this is possibly – I want to say this and be very clear. I think Saquon could potentially have the best season of his career. But I don't think it's going to be the way that a lot of people think. Like, oh, he's going to be breaking all these huge runs. Like, yes, Saquon's a home run hitter, but I think he's just going to be consistently better on a game-to-game basis. And that is why I think Saquon in that Eagles offense is going to be such an impact player. So with Saquon, I have him at number 2. Who do you have at number 2, Dobbs?
All right. And you know what? Again, this is one where it's going to be very polarizing, but it's okay. I'm going to explain my case.
Tony Pollard.
I still, could you imagine? It's fucking hilarious. All right. At number 2, I got the King Henry. And it's weird having him here. It really is. Because you can see, like, yeah, King Henry is getting older, but he still has everything he needs to be very productive. He still has the power. He still has the contact balance. He hasn't lost a ton of speed. He's definitely not, you can just see it. He's lumbering around a little bit more than he used to in terms of how he moves, but it's not like he was ever super twitchy or anything to begin with, so it's not like it affects him that much, right? What I'm really trying to say is, yeah, he's getting older, but it's not like it's the end-all be-all for him like it is for a lot of other backs because his play style just tailors so much to, like, I'm just bigger than you, and you have to bring me down. So, and especially going to this Ravens offense, being able, him and Lamar, truly, I mean, that Todd Monken's going to have a ton of fun because the dichotomy you have of, like, it's just, we could, without getting super nerdy, like, there is so much a defense has to think about now in terms of, like, how hard you got to hit the block on the downhill. But, like, you hit it too hard and Lamar pulls, you're screwed. But you don't hit it hard enough and Henry has that thing, you're screwed also. Like, there's so many mind games now because they're going to be played with having Lamar handing off to Henry and the fact that they run so many reads. I just feel like it's going to benefit Lamar and King Henry both so much that it's like I can see Henry having a real rejuvenation year. If he can just stay healthy again, that's the big contingency. Is he going to be able to be out there 15, even 14 plus games? I don't know. But if he can, I can see him going for another 1,300, 1,400 plus yard year. And we're like, oh, like King Henry's all the way back. It's just a matter of more than anything him being able to stay healthy out there, I think.
So I have Derrick Henry at 6, and I've just learned not to bet against the King. But with that being said, like their O line scares me a little bit, and I also get scared that like obviously like you said, a lot of his game depends on I'm bigger than you, bring me down. But if the Ravens get stunted in the pass game, right? And they can't get it flowing. They had it moving last year, but you don't know how defenses are going to adjust. If they just load the box over and over again to stop like the run game, I could see there being issues with the Ravens offense this year. I still think Derrick Henry and Lamar is a very deadly backfield. And until I see Derrick Henry slow down, I'm not going to buy the hype of, oh, he's old. So I think it could be a very productive year for Henry. I just can't put him higher than 6.
No, yeah. Again, I know you remember I started buying the Henry's hype. Well, I might have started the train like 2 or 3 years ago after he had his first, that the legendary offensive player of the year season. And like you said, he told me non-verbally, he told me don't bet against the fucking King. He told me with his legs. So I'm not going to bet against the King just yet until I see the fall off happen myself.
All right, number 1 for both of us, we have Christian McCaffrey. Is there really?
Yeah, what a surprise.
Yeah, much of an explanation. I mean, with what he's done with the 49ers, I don't understand.
Even the Panthers,
yeah.
he would have probably still been number 1 with that bum Panthers offense. Now he's finally truly unlocked. I'm sorry, Panthers fans, I had to take the shot. You know I'm not lying. You know I wasn't lying. So yeah, it's on this Niners offense. It's like
I just
CMC
don't know.
is taking
yeah.
over.
How do you? I'm just saying, like, how do you? You can't rate him lower. Like, he's obviously the best running back in the league. It's kind of clear and obvious, like the Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
Argument.
it is. It's just clear and obvious from multiple perspectives. He does so much so well. The true definition of a third down back. And he has been the best back in the league now, you could argue, for a long period of time. And he's one of those guys where it's just until he slows down, much like King Henry, it's like you're not going to bet against him. You'd be crazy to. So, like,
no. All right. Those are our top 15 running backs. We're going to